started as like a painter, and I was making these geometrical paintings that referenced architecture in Iran. So there are these texts on the buildings, and they're like religious scripts, and they're also geometric. And when I was younger, I would walk by those buildings and think about how the pattern and the text read as each other a little bit. Like the text reads as pattern and the pattern reads as text. And I was really interested in that because I wasn't so much introduced to the art of architecture in terms of religion. My dad was in construction and very much like a lover of architecture, and he sort of took me around Iran and showed me all these like beautiful old traditional buildings. But the way that he described them to me was like how they were made, the labor that went into the building. Oh, this building has like this many bricks and 70,000 hands that went into making it. I think that those were the moments that were sort of impressed onto me because my dad wanted me and my brother to remember Iran as it was before we moved, or before the revolution, before things started to change. And a lot of those like older monuments, the traditional like buildings, like my grandmother's house, those were all built with so much love and so much like care for the arts. So I went to grad school and started working with different materials. I started sort of doing this like material speed dating of testing out how I can like think of an origin of a material and think about what that would mean in terms of executing like the ideas that I had around architecture. So I went through different mediums like, muslin and resin. I was really interested with artists who had taken like casts, like latex casts of buildings and sort of like peeled them off. Thought maybe like working with like light and space, like that could really bring in the labor, but that conversation still wasn't really happening. And then I met paper. Well, I met printmaking first, and when I was printmaking, you're making like a plate, and then you're like etching it, a copper plate, and then you're running it through the press, and it has this like really sharp like border to it. And when I would always pull it out of the press, like nothing that I had etched really interested me, but I really loved how that like sharp border was like impressing the paper. And I was like, okay, the copper plate's really cool, but like the paper is really doing the work. Like it's taking the impression of another material. Like that is so cool. To make paper, I started taking apart and breaking down recycled, like older paper that were given to me by my community at school. What you have to do with it is like you put it in water, you break it up, and then you blend it, and then you pour it into a screen. It felt like a light bulb switch moment where I was like, okay, the mold is the hard-edged thing that I've been like thinking about, the architecture and the geometry of like putting something into a mold. It all just started to make sense, but also the fact that I had been feeling like I was constantly shape-shifting and trying to fit into a specific mold to like live and exist outside of my country. I started identifying a lot with the material. It felt like I had met like a soulmate. And I think what the paper really did was take my impression, like my fingers, my hands, like all of the tools that I was using that I was interested in were now actually physically coming into the work instead of just being like referenced in an image form. The wood blocks I get from Iran, they're from like a textile shop that discards these wood blocks because they're, 10-layer wood blocks, and then if one layer gets chipped, you can't use any of it. So they get discarded, and then I have a friend, Farinaz, who picks them up for me and sends them to me, but you can't really send things out of Iran, so you have to give them to people, and the people have to like bring it for you. So she gives it to her mom, who gives it to her aunt and cousin and, you know, friend, neighbor, things like that. So I love that it sort of slowly makes its way to this side of the world. It took me a while to realize that I could make abstract work about the body. And I think like one of the artists that I like love so much that did that was Ethel Andan, and also like Agnes Martin. Like they all worked in these like really formal, minimalistic, like geometric ways, but they were talking about the things that were happening around them and like, you know, how they were like physically affected by the landscape around them. You know, I can like stand in front of those works and like feel like I could put like myself in it and I could like add my own story to it too. And I really want the work to feel that way to my viewers. I want to play with the challenge of like making the work about a body without the body. I want it to feel like you can enter the space and have like your own sort of experience within it. Specifically now, like during the revolution in Iran, there's like a lot of slogans, like the women-led revolution. There are a lot of slogans that relate to the garden. And I think it's like so beautiful, and it makes so much sense because it is like a seed is such a small thing, but it's so powerful. You know, you can take it and hold it and safe keep it somewhere and then like plant it later when times are a little bit better and when things have calmed down. But really it feels like a secret, you know, like you're kind of like keeping this weapon, but the weapon is like a seed that you're gonna plant and, you know, regrow and like rebirth something new. And I think it was a really great metaphor for, you know, what we're trying to do in Iran, which is take what exists and build it back up into a better place.